guys haven't come up with one for me.
Okay.
We don't need to.
We're going through, again, the topics that we have here is going through what Darwin is trying to piece together, okay, for his book, his publication. Now, why doesn't he want to publicize his opinions or findings?
The church would absolutely criticize.
Yes, burn him at the stake, put bamboo shoots under his fingernails, pull off his toenails, okay? Plug every hair using very dull tweezers, everything that they could possibly do. They would inflict a tremendous amount of pain on him, and he did not want to do that. Also, what's his livelihood? What is his livelihood? Yeah, and he wants to go on another trip, I'm sure, and get paid for it. So if he comes out with this thing, he's sticking his neck out, and all of a sudden if people say, you know what, we're never going to hire you again, he's out of a job. Okay, so there's a lot writing on the line here for him, just besides all of a sudden doing this. And so the whole idea behind evolution is just surfacing right now. And so he is taking some other scientists that have stuck their necks out with some of their findings or some of their beliefs, and they're putting it all together. Okay, so one of the next things, what was the thing that they used before this? What was the thing that he gathered? What was right before this? Use, disuse.
Lamarck's
Three
theory.
aspects.
One more time.
Lamarck.
Okay, so there was always a tendency that things were getting more and more towards being perfect. That everything was evolving into a more precise species. Okay, that's what is happening. It took all this time to get to that. Now he gets into the area called use, disuse, and we started to discuss it a little bit yesterday. Use, disuse is when they really felt that if creatures were not going to use a particular body part, then they were going to get rid of it. It was going to become useless for them to have, and so future species would get rid of those things. For instance, why do very few why didn't more animals develop tusks? Okay, some animals have them, like the elephants, but they have a lot of large teeth and a lot of tusks in some of the former fossil records. Why didn't they have them? Because they weren't able to get the food that they needed as easily, and so they didn't use them, and so they got rid of them. They could find out that they could grind with smaller teeth, okay, and more teeth. So all of this stuff can kind of make a little bit of sense if you're talking about scientists. Okay, so here's an example of use, disuse. Reptiles stopped using their legs. Okay, some reptile families stopped using their legs. So therefore, they transferred this, I'm not going to use my legs. Okay, that way I have to buy fewer shoes. And if that's the case, then I don't need these legs, and so I can save a whole closet full of shoes. And I guess I'll become a snake. That's what they did. So they got rid of having legs. Now your argument would be, well, does a millipede need all those legs? Could it do a lot? Could it undulate, and could it move a little bit easier with maybe only 500 legs instead of 1,000? See, all these questions could come into mind then, okay, with that. So there's lots of arguments on both sides that you can use, and from a logical standpoint, you can see where they're coming from, okay? Okay, so now evolution takes into account that if these creatures have done this, then we get to point number 3. Point number 3 says that evolution will allow animals to acquire traits. Notice the key word there is acquire. So if an animal says, hey, I need that, I have no way to do that, I will have to create something so I can do that. That's the way that evolution works. So we gave the example of the giraffe, right? We gave the example of some of the other animals. Okay, so there's some animals, for instance, for alligators, since they did develop legs, and they are larger from the salamanders, okay, they have to spend most of their time on their belly, okay, so what they had to do is they had to develop harder skin, tougher skin, so when they run across more jagged areas or harder areas, that they would be protected. Now, my argument against that would be, well, if it was truly evolution, why didn't they just grow longer legs? Get their bellies off the ground. What would they need their bellies on the ground for? Okay, so I mean those are some questions that we would have to do. Now again, they say, well, that's nice smooth bottom, but also very heavy, allows them to glide through the water very easily. Well, that wouldn't affect the length of their legs. Okay, so again, it's one of those things where it all depends on which angle that you want to argue this from. Okay, organisms changed. Okay, they changed, but it took a lifetime for them to change. All right, a lifetime for them to change, and then they were able to pass it on the offspring. Okay, some people feel a need to throw objects at other people just to get their attention too. You know, okay, that's a strong comment.
Hey, she broke.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
One
All right.
bring this thing.
Okay.
Wait.
All right. So again, whose theory is this?
Darwin's.
Lamarck's.
Oh, Lamarck's. Never mind. Sorry.
So Lamarck's theories are all this, and his theory is wrong. Now, this is what other evolutionists say. Okay, other evolutionists say the same thing. Okay, now that right there, sorry. Okay, but it was a rough night.
It's okay. Go ahead on video.
Okay, so again, Darwin is forming these theories here. He's got Lamarck, he's got Houghton, and he's got Lyell. Well, a fourth person comes on the scene here by the name of Malthus. Okay, he is also from England, but notice his occupation. Yeah, he's an economist, so he deals a lot with money and then numbers. He's a numbers guy, okay? And so evolution should fit right into his thinking because he's going to be using some big numbers. And what he did was, okay, he said, you know what? I'm going to do a study, and I have found out that if the earth is this old, and he went back in the Bible, and he followed some of the patterns of the Bible, okay, and how many people that were there, and then he extrapolated that, which is a fancy word to mean he used some kind of derivative to be able to come up with how much population should be, and then he compared it to the present day. And so they had a kind of an idea of how many people are in there today. Do we have an idea of how many people are in the world today?
Yes.
Okay, right by the time when we said this, we've just added maybe 1,000 more people. Okay, just in a matter of seconds saying this, when you consider the entire world. Okay, and how much we're growing. You know, they would say that we're probably about, what, 9 billion people?
We're at 7 billion.
7 billion people? So we're at 7 billion people right now. And so this guy, Malthus, would say, after so much time, we should expect that if this continues to grow, then in about 10 years, we're going to be this many more. That population was growing because people were having babies. More people, more babies. More babies of babies would give you more babies. Okay, that's how people. And it's called exponential growth. And that's what Malthus was saying. Well, now this makes kind of sense then. Okay, that there were more people being born than are dying. And that's a big concern of our country today, the United States. Because there's less people being born now than it was years ago, even though we're having more in each family, or less in each family, even though we're having more babies, but people are living longer. And so now to support them, we're getting very, very close. I think what do they say, in the year 2020, there'll be as many people at retirement age than there'll be people below retirement age. Keep supporting it, because that's when I retire. I need your money. Anyway, okay? All right, so Malthus did this. He says, well, if this is true, okay, that if the growth of cultures is going to continue, then the human population, okay, the human population would soon get too big, okay, that they would run out of space. Well, we've solved that. We build skyscrapers. We build higher, and so we take square footage and we go higher, okay? And he says that, well, when you do that, you are taking up space, more people, more industry, more jobs, all these different things. Then you decrease the amount of food possibility, and so that's going to be a problem. Well, we are starting to create a solution for that. Hence, we have processed food, synthetic food, and sometimes you wonder, how real is this stuff? Okay, all right, how real is this stuff compared to it? All right, because we're engineering it so fast. So Malthus was very concerned about this exponential growth and what's going to happen to things after it gets too much. Okay, so Darwin takes these ideas, okay, and he puts them in connection with his studies, and he compares them to the plants and animals, okay, all right, of that day, all right, and that animals and plants must have had more offspring, okay, than humans. So their growth potential was greater. Okay? So this is what Darwin's thinking is. All right. Okay, if that's true, then what's going to be the result? If you've got more plants and more animals and more people, what is going to be the result? And so then we get into some of his big ideas. Okay? And so now Darwin puts together his thoughts in a journal, in some kind of a production, okay, that's called The Origin of Species. All right? And you might run across a professor in college that might expect you to read that book. Okay? Read Darwin's book, For Origin of Species. There are some synopses on the line that you can get that to have the major points of that book. Okay? But anyway, Darwin did not want to publish this right away because of some things that we've said before. He was kind of holding back a little bit. Okay? All right? Okay? He was bothered tremendously about what he studied because it was so far out of what he was brought up. Something completely different than how he was raised, what he was taught in all the schools. So again, he is publishing something that would be considered heresy, would be considered a heretic. Well, he had a friend, okay, by the name of Wallace. All right, now you see the date here. Okay, when did we start talking about Darwin? remember what it was? 1809, he was born. So we're talking 50 years later, he's ready to publish his findings. So 50 years, okay, but he needs encouragement. And who's the guy who's going to encourage him? It's this Wallace guy, okay? So he said, you know, Darwin, you need to do this, okay? I have these same feelings as well too. We've got a bunch of scientists that are in agreement with you. So we really need to let people know, okay, this, and then they can form their own ideas. All right. Okay, so Darwin's going to publish his work. Now it's easy for you to publish your work and get encouragement from other people, but it's your name that's on the line, isn't it? And so he's taking a big, huge leap here. And people are talking about Darwin to this day. All right? There isn't one biology class, there isn't one classroom that isn't talking about Darwin, okay, when you say the word evolution. All right, so what are some results of his book? What is in his book? What does he publish? Okay? Well, the very first idea is artificial selection. Now think about that word before we start talking about it. Artificial selection. All right? And then you connect that with variation. We understand DNA and how we can pass things on to future generations. Okay? So we're going to pass information on to future generations from our genes. And he brings in this idea of artificial selection. Okay? So now, what is this? Okay? This idea is every single new species that's formed. This is a new species. Okay? All right? They are some kind of variety of a species before that. So his point is, we will not find a new creature that does not fall into a category or has some similar characteristics of other creatures. It's got to be related to someone. All right, that's his big thing. Okay, is that it's going to be related. So if you have something that is skinny and has 6 legs, what do you think it's going to fall underneath? Compared to something that has 8 legs. If it's 8 legs, probably people are going to do what? Spider, probably, right? Or maybe it would be, if it was in the water, they may put it with the lobster or the crabs, a crustacean. But if it has 6 legs, those 2 legs are very, very important. They'll probably put it with insects. Makes sense. Now, if it has these structures coming off of its back that are very, very thin, and they flap, okay, then we would probably assume that it's going to fly. And so if it has less legs than 6, then maybe it might fall into a category of some kind of a bird, right? Okay, some kind of a bird. If it's got leathery skin, if it's got leathery type skin, okay, then probably we would put it into the categories of amphibian or a reptile. Okay, so this is very, very general, isn't it? It's a very general statement, but it covers the bases. Okay, so his example was this. Okay, that the bigger the fruit, okay, the bigger the fruit, the more survival that you have. That some cows will give more milk than other cows. And so if more cows give more milk, then they'll probably be able to have offspring that will have more milk. Okay? And it kind of follows through that idea that we are living longer. And the longer that humans are on this earth, we should be living longer and longer lives. So another 1,000 years, we might be up to 150 years old. Woo! Okay? Wonder what kind of drugs will be around that okay? All right. So what is artificial selection? Okay? Artificial selection is what we're into big time today. We selectively breed. Do you think a farmer that wants to raise beef, what do you think he's going to do in raising cattle? Yeah. He's going to choose one. He's going to choose one bull. He's going to choose a bull that's not going to be weak and small. He's going to choose a bull that's very large. And he's going to selectively breed those other cows with that bull. You will not find a lot of bulls in a herd. A lot of times you find the female cows and you have one male, maybe 2 males, but they're never in the same area. Because that's something else that takes over there. That ends up being more behavior. Okay? And so that's artificial selection. Now the crazy thing about this is that some people would love to see this happen with humans. That you merge sperm and egg and you selectively breed humans. You probably have heard about
They are prick.
it's not a scandal, but you heard about the athlete that all of a sudden he was engaged to this other gal, and he came out and said he was gay. Did you hear about him?
Nope.
And they were supposed to be married. Now, isn't that a shock to your system?
Yep.
You're engaged to be married, you have a wedding dress, and all of a sudden the guy comes out before you get married and says, "Hi. Oh, by the way, I'm gay." Yeah. Whoa. Okay, that might shake you up just a little bit, right? Okay. So the thing is, and the reason I'm bringing this up is not to necessarily talk about that lifestyle, but what she says is, I thought he was the one. Okay, we were very compatible, everything else. So I guess I'll just save my eggs, and she's producing eggs and saving them to be able to raise maybe her own children. Okay, well, oh my. Maybe she's not talking about necessarily getting married to someone else, but to merge her eggs with someone else and raise a child. So now, who's she gonna to get artificially, not artificially inseminated, but she's talking about merging that and then having a surrogate. So we got that science. You take an egg from someone, sperm from another one, mix them in a test tube, and then you implant this into someone else that wants to be pregnant. You know, I'm sure a lot of you ladies do not go home and tell your parents that. "Hi, I want to be a surrogate." Okay. I think your mother will your dad would be very angry, and your mother will have a heart attack. Okay, so don't do that to her. But this came out in a CNN. I don't know if did you see the CNN one? They did a special, or maybe it was Nightline, where they did a special where they have some people, some gals in India that's what they do. They stay pregnant. That's their job. They get paid to be pregnant. And they artificially inseminate them with things to raise. They have the baby is taken, and then they get inseminated again. That's $20. Now that tells you what their economy is like. $20. Wow. Now I think that's how is that okay? So the reasoning is this. Hey folks, the reasoning is this. It makes perfect sense when you live in a society that accepts stuff like this. It makes perfect sense because the society says, "Hey, my wife and I can't have a baby. So you're telling me because we can't have a baby and somebody else is willing to carry that child just for 9 months, and it's my sperm and her egg, the wife's egg, and you're telling me that that's wrong? We're willing to pay this person?" See the logic? That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Okay? Yeah, and the thing is why do they go there? Because it's cheaper. Because they say adoption costs too much. It takes too much time. And if you do it in America, dinero. Okay? Alright, so
Go to Ethiopia.
Now, we do it today. Here's a perfect example. This is an example that he used for evolution. Folks. For evolution. Okay? And that is this. Okay? You don't want to do that because if this goes online, people see this, they think that this is a joke. Okay? Alright, so we're turning a teaching tool into a very behavioral problem. Alright, anyway. He says, well, what happened was this. Plants that are food-bearing plants, this would be very logical. What happened? A plant felt that, or people that raise these plants said, we want to get thicker roots. So how about if we just bend this here? It'll form the bulb. And the bulb gets bigger, and so therefore that's how we got turnips. Okay, the head of it had more flowers, and we did something. The original plants had that, so all of a sudden that's where cauliflower came from. So these plants developed a need from somewhere, either by insect, by wind, by controlling, to artificially select different parts of it, so it could be edible in different ways. And then once you get the leaves that are edible, those developed into its own plant. But the original parent of a lettuce, cauliflower, carrot, radish, these other things. Logical, interesting logic. Yes?
How would it get its color?
Well, good question here. They would probably say that most plants are green, so the color chlorophyll doesn't change. Chloroplast doesn't change. So, I mean, again, a lot of different things here. They say, well, it's common. Not all carrots are orange. We can get carrots that are purple. We can get carrots that are things. It's a type of soil. So, yeah, interesting. Next item here is natural selection. This he's big on. So you got artificial selection. This is where we decide something. Natural selection is where the process is done in nature. Nature takes care of itself. Nature takes care of itself. Okay? Natural selection. All right, same process, but instead of us controlling, nature controls it. So how does this happen? Okay? All right? If there's a higher birth rate, okay, higher birth rate of animals, but you don't have enough food, okay, this would force animals to prey on each other, and there'd be competition. And so guess what's going to happen? If there's competition for the same food source, what's going to happen?
A species will die off.
Exactly. And so that's how we get extinction. Okay? Is that natural selection? They're not going to be able to survive. Oh, so that brings up one of his key points that always accompanies his book. Survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest. We say today only
The strong
the
will survive.
strong survive. Only the strong survive.
False
That
though.
is Darwin's.
His family line
Okay.
is good, man.
That's right. He's gonna live forever.
Yeah, John Strong.
Survival of the fittest. Okay? That if you're the strongest, you will survive. But now what's the problem with that? Does it make sense?
Yes.
How many say it makes sense?
I do.
It's gotta make sense. Okay? It's gotta make sense, because if you're stronger than something else, you're gonna survive. You're gonna feed off the other species, you're gonna wipe it out. But what's the problem?
Extinction.
Goodbye to the
Why do we
little
stop these
things.
little things here? Why aren't the dinosaurs here? They'd be the strongest ones.
They have claws.
So you're saying they killed off all the food source and then they died? Well, if that's the case, why is anything alive today?
Asteroid hit him.
This one asteroid, we got all these dinosaurs in this one area, and poof! Asteroid!
Blood killed
I like that game.
Never get past the stage one.
Are you serious? It's so easy. So easy. Royce.
So here we go.
Royce, I understood.
So what's the idea behind survival of the fittest? Okay, he believed on his studies, especially in the Galapagos Islands, that the reason why some species were not there is because they got killed on that island, or they got eliminated altogether. That only there was a struggle, and the ones that were too weak never survived. Now, I'm in partnership with another guy at our church here raising chickens. And we bought 100 chickens. Now, we didn't want 100 chickens, but the guy says, you got to buy 100 chickens because within the first 2 weeks, this percentage of them will die. Well, no way. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to nurture every single... No, we're going to nurture every single one of them. It just can't happen. But what happens? The weak ones?
Die off.
Yeah, because they can't get to the food source. Okay, and they know that. Animals know that. Okay, so a dog, how many will be in a litter?
Like
12.
And what do we call the smallest one?
the runt.
And usually the runt.
He died.
In fact, in